Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello. It's Gemma, and welcome to episode 125, which I can tell you right now is already named in honor of our great event, which is simply Welcome, new listener, Easter baby. We are extending a warm welcome to our newest listener here at Cognitive, and that is Easter baby Fred, who happens to belong to our own well-loved, beautiful Christina, alias Chris Ah. She had her gorgeous baby on Good Friday afternoon, a little bit after 3. And I am proud to say that her wonderful husband was reading Jane Austen's Persuasion while Christina was in labor. Let's hear it for Team Literacy. Right on. Congratulations, Christina and baby daddy and new listener, baby Fred. We've had a lot of really interesting events here at the Cognitive Podcast, but I do believe this is the first time I've got to announce the newest listener this way. So Fred, welcome to the clan. We're glad to have you along. It's been a wild week here at Rancho Cognitive, and this is one of the real high points of it. Well done, Christina. Congratulations. And he's absolutely gorgeous. No, his picture isn't in the show notes because, I don't publish people's baby pictures without their express invitation to. But just to make up for it, you can see a picture at the top of my own clever 17-year-old. He's there getting a big hug from the Easter Bunny because he went to an egg hunt, and he was the only kid who thought of it. I think they did it at his track team's meeting, and the track team is everybody from like age 6 up to 17. But anyway, while everybody else was hunting for Easter eggs, Mr. Clever found the bunny and hugged him. And the bunny was giving everybody else an egg. He gave my kid 4. Right on! That kid is a chip off the old block. I couldn't have manipulated that situation emotionally any better. So there we go. There's my Easter bunny grinning at the camera, showing all those pearly whites because he knew he was being clever. Let's see what else. So under the warm thanks, obviously we're thanking beautiful Christina for sending me that news that has made me so happy. But I'm going to mention a few other people. Lisa McLK. I didn't do the whole name there. But anyway, I'm so glad you're with us. I appreciate your message, and I'm glad you're there. Blue-haired hiker. She's still in Georgia, hiking up the Appalachian Trail. If you're listening to us, we're all rooting for you. Stay well. Keep safe out there. And then there's Readera. Anyway. Wow, she really went the extra mile for the team, and I have shamelessly stolen the information she gave us, which is, she said, there is a YouTube channel of a man who spent time in Kyoto talking about Maiko and Geiko culture. So you may remember I recommended a show about this from Netflix a few weeks ago. And so I included the link that she gave us, which will take you to him. I haven't had a chance to look at it myself yet, but he's apparently talking about Maiko and Geiko culture. And then she said, but did you know there is a podcast about The Good Place? And that is done by the actor who played Sean, and apparently has tons of interviews with cast and crew. She gave us the link for that. Readera, oh my gosh. And then she gave us a link to the book about the moral philosophy being used in the show. So there we go. I put those links in whole cloth. I'm so grateful. Once again, thank you to everybody who continues to pay tribute to my dear absent friend Blankets. And so it's been exciting. And thank you. What a week. What a week. All of you guys going the extra mile here. I've expected a lot out of my listeners, but having a baby it's the first time I ever asked for that and got my wish. Anyway, let us meander on to what is on my hooks and needles. I have finished nothing, but boy, did I run out of control this week. Yes, I did. It was a lot of fun. First off, the stash tossed. Since January 1st, 4 new skeins into the stash, 27 skeins out. We have added no new ones, but we're about to because we've had a good day here at Rancho Cognitive. In fact, we've had a great weekend. So let me catch you up. First off, you may remember in our last episode that first of all it showed up labeled episode 124, episode 125. So I've tried to go back and fix that. We'll see if that worked. I tried to reload everything into Libsyn. So hopefully episode 124 will now be properly labeled. In the meantime, I mentioned in that episode that I had tossed the sock stash while looking for other things and went a little crazy looking at all my leftover sock yarn and had this craving to make a Franken sock. Well, you know me and cravings. Being the model of all that is restrained and self-controlled, I immediately began to make some Franken socks. And you can see the top of one of them in all its glory. And it is called I Need Me Some Stripes Socks. Because really at this point I've got 400 something projects on Ravelry, so I could probably name it Kitchen Sink. I mean, it doesn't matter. My names have gone beyond the point of meaningless, so I might as well call them what they are. And if you look at that, there's some oldies but goodies in there. A lot of happy memories. Every time you do a Franken socks, those stripes bring back happy memories. And one of them in there at least, there's 2 of them that were only ever used in shawls. So it's nice to kind of bring them into the stripy sock world. So how do these work? You probably know, if you've been listening for a while, every October I make the Franken socks. That is, to celebrate Halloween, I take my leftover sock yarns and I do a certain recipe of striping so that I can use up. I don't use them up, by the way. I just use part of them. These things go on forever. But I have a formula and I stripe it. And I stripe it kind of randomly. I just grab the first 6 colors I can find, and then usually a 7th for the heel, and the 8th I have to have the most volume of yarn because I do the entire foot in color number 8. Okay, so the formula, if you look at it, if you look at the picture, you can pretty much see the formula in action. I assume 10 rows per inch. I'm using size 2 needles, ChowGoos in fact, and I like to do 2 inches of ribbing at the top of my socks. I go top down. And so I don't change color in that because I find it annoying. So usually the first 2 inches are a single color. And that's 2 inches. I do a 7-inch leg. So I'm going to do 5 stripes of 1 inch each. Actually, I do 5 stripes of 10 rows each. The ribbing is 20 rows. And then the stripes are 10 rows each. So it's 1 20-row ribbing in one color. And then I do 5 stripes in 10 rows each. I hope that made sense. Then I do waste yarn for an afterthought heel. And then I go into the foot. And in the foot, I use the yarn I really don't like that much. I use cheap yarns, ugly yarns, whatever. So this time around, I looked at them and I said, you know, I have a lot of really beautiful leftover yarns, and I've got a few that are not as beautiful. But I don't want to put them on the feet of the socks. I'd still rather use the more expensive yarns, even the ones that are not as beautiful as the stripes, because you can have anything happen when you stripe. Look at that sock, you'll see what I mean. So I actually went into my stash and I found some of my Premier Serenity sock yarns. I started looking at my less expensive yarns that I bought on a whim because they were like $2 a skein or something like that, and decided those would do great for the feet. So I have not started the foot on that sock in the picture, but I'm using a Serenity sock, and it's actually very pretty in its own way. It's white and green and blue, but it's, you know, if I'm going to knit entire socks, I'd rather knit them out of something from an indie dyer and save this kind of thing to do the hidden parts like the feet of random Franken socks. Okay, so what did I actually do here in the I Need Me Some Stripes socks? Well, I pulled out 2, yes, 2 size 2 needles because I had them. And these are circulars, and I think they're 40s. And I just started the same sock on each one. So you're looking at sock number 1, which even as we speak, I am knitting the foot of. Sock number 2, I've got the ribbing, and I think I'm on the 4th of 5 stripes just about there. And then I don't care what I do with them. I will put them down or whatever because I'm not going to finish them right away because I'm really dedicated to the Spring is Coming socks, which that first one's going along handily. If you look at the picture, I'm about an inch away from the toe decreases. And what happened here is I got bored. And that's a beautiful sock. As you can see, it's just gorgeous. Tempe yarn. Punta yarn. Penta or Punta, I forget the name. It's in my Ravelry notes. It's from 2010. That's why I'm not worrying, because it's 13-year-old sock yarn. I don't even know if the company still exists. But anyway, it's colorway HP66. And it's so beautiful, and yet it got tedious, and that's what drove me to knit stripes. For some reason, when I do the Franken socks, I never get bored. So there we are. There's my first of the Spring is Coming socks, and I'm probably going to finish it tonight or tomorrow, and then go on to the heel, and then go on to the second sock. I do not suffer from second sock syndrome. I usually am really eager to start the second sock because I am so afraid of second sock syndrome. As it is, I've got 3 sock needles dedicated right now. One is the first Spring is Coming socks. The other is both of the other 2 needles that are being used right now are both being used on the Franken socks, the I Need Me Some Stripes socks. And so I imagine I'm going to finish the first Spring is Coming and get going on the second. And as soon as I get bored, I'll go back to the Franken socks. The trick with the Franken socks is I realized I want to do 1 stripe per night. It's only 10 rows. And so I thought I really just want to make a bunch of these and use up sock yarn, but I don't want to really dedicate myself. I want to just sort of here and there add a stripe and move on, or add 10 rows when I get down to the foot and move on. I don't want to get too into the Franken socks, but I do want them to be there because eventually I'll get back and finish them both in time for Halloween. Vestuary. Remember my vestuary vest? My knitting attacked me. I was on to the ribbing, as you may remember, in the last episode. And one night I was very tired after work and I got the insane idea that I would do the neck ribbing. And this is a V-neck. And I did. And it was too tight on the left side. And I realized I had to pull the whole thing out because I really don't think I picked up the stitches well. Because by the time I got to the last part of the V-neck, I was just tired. So I ripped all that out and was terribly moody. And I said, okay, new rule. Not doing that ribbing until I have daylight. So I'll wait for the weekend. So this is Monday, April 10th at 8:11 p.m. as I record this, and it is the weekend. So this afternoon I said, okay, look, I really got to stop chickening out here. And I sat down and I did pick up the stitches, and it came out beautiful! It looks so good. Now, usually I do my ribbing in a smaller needle size. I didn't on this one. I actually did the ribbing on the same size 7 that I used for the body. I know because I learned this on the last V-neck, Vestuary 2022, which was Malabrigo Rios in Heaven and Earth. And on that one, I accidentally did the ribbing on the neckline in the size 7 needle. And I also switched to a 2x2 rib. Usually I do a 1x1. Turns out I really like the 2x2 rib on the neckline, and I like it on a size 7 needle. I like it a little more relaxed. I think it just evens itself out and lays better on the finished vest. So that's nice. So now all I have are the armhole ribbing. So, that's basically 2 evenings. I'm not that worried. I got to be careful what I say. I'll somehow curse myself. But usually the ribbing on the arms goes pretty well. It's always the neckline ribbing where I get a bit tense. So that's very nice because I'd really like to get the Vestuary 2023 finished. No love on the lane splitter. Oh, but the don't know yet blanket, oh my gosh, it has happened. I am finished all of the small seams. That is to say, all the rows are now sewn together into full rows. And then I have, and there's a picture of it, I have rows 1 through 16 completely sewn together with the ends woven. Row 17 is clipped on. So my next trick is to do the long seam and join row 17 and then hide all the ends. And then I will do row 18 and hide all the ends, and row 19 and hide all the ends, and I will be finished. The interesting thing, I was whining last week about I got to go faster because once the warm weather hits, I'm just going to have this giant blanket in my lap and I'm going to kind of roast. Well, the warm weather hit, but nonetheless, I am so close I can taste it. There is a picture of the so far assembled blanket, and it's spread across our giant couch. That's a 7-foot couch, and you can see the size of the blanket. And there's also a picture of the original layout, which I altered very slightly. And there's a picture of me, and I'm standing and I'm holding the blanket. I have it rolled up into a tube, and it's lying across my shoulders, and then I'm sweeping it around to my right side and holding part of it in front of me while the other part is over my shoulder. Yeah, it is the world's most beautiful sari. Not quite, it's really more of a sash, but you see what I'm doing there. Because I wanted to give you a sense of the scale of it. I'm 5.5 feet tall. So you can see I've got like about a good 7.5 feet of blanket there in the length of it. Well, actually that would be the width of it. So it's very, very exciting. And the don't know yet, what I'm really proud to say is literally when you say 16 rows are completely finished and put together, that is 304 blocks out of 361, and that represents 84% of the blanket being done. And it's so great because the last rows are in the cardboard carton of Doomy Doom Doom at my feet. That's rows 18 and 19, while row 17 is clipped on and awaiting the long seam and the finishing work. It was nice because when I spread it out today, I also realized that there are little repairs that need to be done. First off, it needs a washing because blankets did lie on it. There are little specks of dirt on it. And there are places where, like the corners, one corner, the tie off of that block did not work as well, and so the corner's a bit gappy. So I do have to go through and weave in some more ends and look at things more carefully and maybe do a little bit of tightening up. But, you know, we're not far from the end there. This kind of blows my mind. I have to tell you, I never expected to finish this. Well, that's how I was with the temperature blanket in 2021. I thought, who really sticks with a temperature blanket for 365 days? And then I did. And I'm totally in love with my temperature blanket. And it is really a twin, but I have it on our queen size bed. This one was really designed with our queen size bed in mind. It's huge. And I'm really happy with it. And again, you think 361 blocks, am I really going to be patient enough to sew all those seams and then assemble it? Well, it looks like I am, guys. And what's interesting too is this feeds back into the Franken socks, into the I Need Me Some Stripes socks. Because I realized when I was doing the stash toss, I really miss the do some little bit of a major project every day logic. I really miss the temperature blanket. I really miss the don't know yet, where I just kept doing squares. And I think that's why I started doing the striping socks from my leftover yarn, because I think it's the sense of I like to do a little piece every day and get a big project. And those of you who are paying attention would be saying, Gemma, that's how knitting works anyway. You very rarely sit down in one night and do an entire project. It's true. The thing about these blocks, the thing about the stripes on the temperature blanket, the thing about the stripes on the Franken socks is it's a discrete unit. You do one block and you can see it. There is one complete block. It's its own unique color. It will go next to blocks of other colors. You could say this about the stripes. So I think that's what I'm really trying to do. Regardless of what I'm trying to do, I'm having a lot of fun, and I like these little incremental projects that add up in discrete units. As opposed to, you know, a sweater, you do 10 rows and it looks just like the 10 rows before it. However, this is not going to stop me from going on to some sweaters, but not right now. The goal right now is I really would like to get through the don't know yet. I'd like to finish the lane splitter. Of course, I want to finish vestuary. Vestuary is going to be the first thing I finish. I really want to get that done. But, you know, I have a lot of other projects that are very far along, and I'd like to get them done. You know, the Lady Eleanor. So we will see. The other thing I've noticed, my stash is finally noticeably smaller. I am relocating skeins from one half-filled bin to another three-quarter filled bin. So piece by piece. The other thing is I just have a huge row of project bags on the floor in here because by going through bins I discovered that I had other projects that I set up in project bags but never got to. And I'll come back to those because they're all sitting here too. But it's pretty exciting. I feel like I'm just working my way through all this really good stuff that I want to get done. In the meantime, I am preparing to embroider because I want to go back to the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery. That's here too. And I have a few other embroidery projects and cross-stitch projects that I'm thinking of going to now that I have set up my nice embroidery corner in our big bedroom with my beautiful light and magnifier and rocking chair. So this is all very exciting. My favorite resources are there. I haven't visited any of them lately, but you can see them. I probably should add Raspberry Studios from Etsy to this list because I'm so deeply in love with my chatelaine. But my chatelaine's plural, but we will come back to that. Disney Blondes, believe it or not, I started spinning. I'm drop spindling because I'm realizing I'm going to have to explain my project to the deaf culture class. And my project is hand spun. So I thought, well, I'm not going to haul a wheel in, not even one of my nanos. I'm just not going to. But I thought I could take a draft spindle in and just say, if you're wondering how you spin yarn, this is how. And show them, lickety split. Okay, for those of you who wonder, how do you spin yarn? This is what it looks like. This is a draft spindle. I'm going to show you right here. I do this, this, and this. Look at that, a single ply of yarn. You twist 2 of those together or 4 of those and blah, blah, blah. So I did. I went back I got some cheap fluff. I want to say this was back in the day. They used to have a yarn get-together. Oh my gosh, I can't even think what town it was in. I think it was in Orange County. And Yarnisphere. And anyway, they used to do that and they stopped. And I'm not really sure why. But while I was there one time, somebody was just selling what she considered junk fluff and junk wool. And it had little blots. It was a pure white and had little blots of red and orange on it. This stuff is spinning up beautifully. I would imagine it's a mixed breed, like a Peruvian Highland mixed breed type thing. I don't think it's merino. It's not that smooth. But it's doing just fine. And for some reason, because a few years ago at Sunnybank, I taught spinning. So I took this with me as my sample to teach people how to use a drop spindle. And so it's been sitting here for a while, just in its bag, waiting to be used. So I've been messing with that a little bit. I am also still spinning Minerva's fur. A little bit of fluff a day. Fortunately, she's helping. She gave me 3 bits of fluff today because it's shedding season. I'm starting to find bits of dog hair everywhere too. Meanwhile, let's move on to a strategy. I am still working my way through Japanese, and mostly these are Buddhist, I believe, concepts that are related to what I would call mindfulness. And these are sort of concepts of living that keep you in touch with the mindful realities of impermanence, perfectionism, completion and incompletion, and change. So today's is called Gaman, and that translates as dignity under pressure. It doesn't actually. It translates as something like patient endurance. But the interpretation seems to be you show dignity particularly when you're under pressure. This is really important in Buddhism, that it is a sign of spiritual and emotional maturity when you stay calm in a crisis. And this involves developing self-control to a high level when you're in crisis, and it has to be backed by an attitude of resilience, of belief that you can get through, and of patient endurance, that you can get through, but you have to tolerate the reality of the now. So this is Gaman. And, when you look at the act hexagon, it's not as obvious that this takes in a few of the concepts. What I would say is the idea of having dignity under pressure is a value, straight up, that it is an absolute sense of direction. And it is something that you have to believe you have when all else fails and you don't know what to do. That's when we rely on the values. And that keeps us from simply being reactive and only relative in our actions with no values. We just, that keeps us from basically being hedonistic or selfish. Values are when I don't know what to do, I have these guiding ideas. And so that really is firmly where Gamen, the idea of dignity under pressure, sits. It is the value in Buddhism of an emotionally mature individual. But I have to say that there's a slight overlap. Like, in other words, if you have dignity under pressure, you also have cognitive diffusion. That is, you are able to move freely between ideas and thoughts. You don't get fixated on saying, I am frantic, and that's who I am, and that's my identity, and that's who I'm going to be. And that is, cognitive fusion. That is rigidity. Okay, and so Gamen dictates that you are not rigid, that while you may be taken by surprise and startled and distressed, you will resort to your value of Gamen, of your dignity under pressure. And, that's going to also tangentially take in the idea of acceptance, that to have dignity under pressure, you also have to have a sense of realistically, this is what is going on in my now, that all the fantasizing and the denial in the world does not help me, that I have to accept where I am in the now. So that is Gamen. I really like this because I think that we give this away. Chris Rock did a really good comedy special recently on Netflix, and I cannot remember the name of it, but it was very, very smart, and it's where he talks about what happened with him and Will Smith at the Academy Awards. And he just does this very, very good deconstruction of the way we are using victimization in our culture. And at the same time, he doesn't take a victim stance. He takes a very realistic stance. This is what's going on. This was what was happening to me in that moment. And this is the way I decided to handle it. And if you want to see Gamen, it was Chris Rock not striking back at Will Smith. And whatever you want to make of that moment, whyever you think that happened. By the way, Chris Rock's explanation is the one I would take seriously, but there's so many other interpretations of that moment, and I don't want to go there. But what I do want to say is, whatever you think was happening between those men, whyever you think it happened, Chris Rock had Gamen. He had dignity under pressure, and he states that at the end. He says, I was raised not to do certain things. I was raised, basically says, with self-control. And he gives a few different reasons why his parents taught him that self-control. And okay, and that's all good. But what I want you to get is that ability to stay calm, to remember where he was, to remember the various pressures acting on him as the host of the show, and to not give way to pure reactivity when another adult walked up and punched him in the face. Man, that is Gamen. That is the moment I would want you to remember. In the fluffy books, let's see what's new. I finished the first book of Lynn Messina's Verity Lark series, which ties into the Beatrice Hyde Clare series. So I went back and I'm finishing the Beatrice Hyde Clares. So that revitalized that, and they're fun. They are fun. I think one of the things that bores me is Messina falls into this one bad habit. Her characters will stop in the middle of a moment of dramatic tension, and they will go on and on about their deeper levels of thought. And really, the timing is wrong. That if you set up a moment of tense exchange or witty banter or exciting action, you don't stop for 3 pages of exposition of the heroine's thoughts, but Lynn Messina does. And I think that's why the series bogs down, is she doesn't know how to do that kind of pacing. Yes, these would be good things to know what Beatrice or Verity are thinking about, but we don't need it in the middle of a really tense exchange with another character or a moment of action. However, I'm enjoying them. On the Netflix side, I was taken quite by surprise by The School of Good and Evil. I think the trailers kind of deceived me. I thought, it's another fairy tale rewrite. How cute. It's actually a movie. And it's okay. It's okay. I enjoyed it. I sort of saw the ending coming. But what interested me was we had Lawrence Fishburne and Michelle Yeoh in it. And they don't do garbage projects. And I thought, well, this sure looks like a garbage project. Did they just need money or something? Because they don't have to do this kind of thing, I don't think. I hope not. No, actually, it's a very long, slow setup for the ending. And the ending caught me off guard in all the right ways because I thought, oh, Lord, we're going to sell out to a tame fairy tale ending of, cis heteros getting together. And in a sense, it's very Shakespearean comedy, although Shakespeare does it with a lot more intelligence and thoughtfulness and questioning. But, the basic fairy tale ending is you have a person of one sex, and sex is defined as gender in fairy tales usually, and they have a very dear friend of the same sex and gender. And that friendship saves them until they meet the handsome prince, at which point they chuck off the friendship as a sort of forerunner of the more allegedly mature relationship of a heterosexual marriage. And that's lovely, and I'm not going to get into all the culture behind that. But, we all enjoyed the fact that Frozen overturned that. And that in the movie Frozen, true love's kiss is delivered sister to sister. Well, School of Good and Evil goes a little further, and I really like it. Because in the end, you realize, I suddenly realized, am I sitting through an ending that is supporting lesbianism? And they don't say yes and they don't say no, but it can be read that way. Put it that way. They never say anything explicitly, but the very end, the epilogue, you got to sit there and go, oh, this is beautiful. So I would recommend The School of Good and Evil on Netflix, but it's a long setup for the ending. Speaking of things that were unexpected on Netflix, I got sucked into watching The Two Popes, which is a movie from 2019, and it covers the issue of the retirement of Pope Benedict and his replacement coming on the scene, who is the current Pope Francis. I have to tell you, I have never been impressed with the hierarchy of the Catholic Church. I was raised in the Catholic Church. I adhere to parts of Catholic dogma, but I have always felt the upper level is just a boys' club. But I was a little surprised. I was looking at the ad that popped up on my Netflix, and the leads are Anthony Hopkins as the retired Pope Benedict and Jonathan Pryce as the current Pope Francis. I really like both these actors, and while I've tried to forgive Hopkins for The Silence of the Lambs, still, he usually associates himself with only intelligent projects. I really like Pryce. I think he's one of the most underappreciated British male leads that we've had in the last 30 years. He's ubiquitous. You see him all over the place, but most Americans have no idea who he even is. And I think he's a very good, very powerful actor. And he often gets roped into the second male lead behind the likes of someone like Hopkins. So it's pretty cool to see him have the big lead here. The man who created the film, I suspect, is South American or Argentinian. And he's really interested in that whole story. He's interested in who Francis is and where he comes from. He doesn't actually waste a lot of time on who Benedict, that is the former Ratzinger, is. He really doesn't. He does mention several times a lot of people's belief that Ratzinger was a Nazi. Ratzinger died recently, Benedict, but he doesn't go into that. He really is examining the background of the current Pope. At the same time, it's a really interesting movie. It's a movie about how an ultra-conservative Pope gets replaced by an ultra-liberal Pope, keeping in mind that ultra-liberal is a very, very relative term, because you notice he's very open about things like homosexuality, and he's worried about poverty, but women in the church, no. So, anyway, you can hear my gripes. But I was surprised. I thought I'll watch it for 10 minutes to say I did. I got sucked into it and couldn't stop until it was over. It has some very charming moments, but the performances of the male leads are extremely powerful. And the other thing that I did like about it is, sometimes I find myself thinking, how can you possibly follow these people? Well, yeah, like I said, I think of the hierarchy as kind of a boys' club. And it really does remind you of the power of what the boys have done, both good and bad. And so I was drawn into it. I don't think that's because of my own history. I think it's because these are really powerful performances, and the filming is very powerful. The content is a little strong. There are scenes where I had to look away. But I have to say, I was very pleasantly surprised by The Two Popes on Netflix. I didn't expect to like it, and I was glued to it. Something I really like, I gave you a picture of my new Chatelaine watch. This is a watch from, again, Raspberry Studios, and this comes on a long chain for a necklace, and you can just wear it as a necklace. This is not a nurse's watch. That is, when you hang it around your neck, you're hanging it so the viewer sees it right side up, and you will see it upside down. A nursing necklace or pin, it would be upside down, so that when the nurse looks down, she is seeing the proper orientation. So she can just look down at her chest or abdomen and see the time without having to flip it upside down in her imagination. Nevertheless, I was a little intrigued by this. This is one of the more expensive parts of the do-it-yourself Chatelaine sets that Raspberry Studios sells. I was very intrigued by it. I thought it would be fun to have a little watch because sometimes I let my iWatch go dead, without thinking. Turns out I've really enjoyed it. It comes with a short chain. You can hook it directly to your waist chatelaine or your necklace chatelaine, or you can wear it itself independently as a necklace. If you look carefully, you will see that it is sitting inside a case. So you're looking at it, but if you press down on the top, the front outer silver rim pops forward, and that will reveal an inner watch that has all the numbers on it, just like they are on the outer case. So when you open it, you can also see the time, but you don't have to open it. You can just turn it over in your hand and look at it. And it has a battery in there, so you can replace the battery. It is a quartz watch. It's really quite nice. So that is what I like. You can see the scale. It's there on my own fingers. And I have been really enjoying having it around. I've worn it quite a lot. I continue to wear my chatelaine, although right now as I speak, I'm wearing my scissors on a necklace, which I bought, of all places, on Amazon. And I really love these guys. And I wear these the most. Of all my accoutrements, I tend to wear the scissors on a necklace the most. One of the problems with putting scissors on a chatelaine is, of course, the pointy ends poke you. They hang at the bottom of the chatelaine and you get poked. And there are various chatelaine solutions, but I haven't found a great one. So most of the time when I have my chatelaine on, what I've got is the cutting disc. And you know what that looks like. It's a disc with little notches, and each notch has a little hidden bit, tiny bit of blade. So you rub the thread against it and it cuts it. So usually I have a cutting disc, but when I'm sitting at home, I tend to sit with my scissor necklace chatelaine the most. Put a lid on it. The tea tastings continue. This one was nice. Champs-Élysées, I don't pronounce French well, herbal rooibos tea by Plum Deluxe. This was delightful. First of all, it's got a lovely hibiscus kind of smell, a little bit sour. And you can see the ingredients there. It's got cherry, it's got apple pieces, and I showed you the tea itself sitting in one of my tea diffusers after it had soaked, because I wanted you to see. You can see the apple bits popping up in it. The flavor when you drink it, it's very hibiscus. There's that slight sourness, and there's a hint of the apple. The scent is not strong on this one, and so in the back of your mouth, as well as when you inhale it through your nose, it's not strongly scented. As I think Jag Warrior points out, this stuff is great cold. And most hibiscus teas, anytime you get a really red tea that's hibiscus red, that does tend to make a cold tea, a really good cold tea. And Jag Warrior points this out too, and I would agree with that. That's been my observation. So I usually save my hibiscus teas for iced tea, because they make this really nice, tangy, cold iced tea. However, I drank this hot. As you can see, it's a sample envelope, and I really, really quite liked it. And while I wish there was more intense scent to it, I really enjoy the scent part of my hot teas. This stuff is good. This is good hot, but I think it would really stand out cold. I also think it's probably going to be nice on a sore throat. However, it is certainly nice as an iced tea, and it was certainly pleasantly drinkable as a hot tea. So this is the Champs Élysées, whatever, herbal rooibos tea by Plum Deluxe, noted as a rooibos. So it has the push of a caffeine tea, but it does not have caffeine. On to the blather. Well, let's see. ASL, not much is happening in deaf culture class. We're meeting this week. We have another speaker. It's gotten very nice because the teacher has reached that moment of realizing she's just going to give me an A. I always enjoy that moment. There's that moment where they sort of figure like, okay, you're way beyond this class, aren't you? And at the same time, she's starting to openly say, I really look forward to your essays because I'm having a lot of fun. I write them in a very journalistic style. And I feel very free to just express. Like she requires these be 400 words and mine are usually like 1,200. But I take the time to put style into it. Let's face it, I'm an experienced writer. Of course I write beautiful essays, even if they are a bit long. But by a bit long, 2 pages, no big deal. So she's enjoying that, and I'm enjoying her enjoying it. And she just openly now says, these are so good. She gave us the essay from Perdition 2 weeks ago, and it was trying to talk about the pros and cons of placing deaf children in different school placements. I shudder to think what my classmates made of that because I even found it challenging. Nonetheless, despite a few glitches, because I wrote it very quickly, she just ate it and just gave me full points because I did a very thorough job. But honest to God, I have no idea how my classmates could have come up with that stuff. Because the problem in this class is she gets a speaker in and she doesn't do her own lecture. And so we only get like a third of each lecture, and then we kind of have to guess or research. So it's a very uneven class, but I quite like the teacher, and I am learning a lot about deaf culture. What's really important to me is I'm learning a lot about modes of behavior that are appropriate when interacting with capital D deaf people, that is, people participating in the actual deaf culture. Not just people who happen to have lost their hearings, but people who sign, people who are involved in deaf forms of art and culture. So it's going pretty well. I've been trying to enjoy it. I'm looking forward to Deaf Nation. That will be at the Pasadena Convention Center on May 6th, and I will be at it because I have to do 2 hours of events and talk about it and write an essay. And that's nice because that's the last major project, I believe, of the class. The pup date. Well, Captain and Queenie have settled in. Every now and then I see an indication that they're thinking about blankets, but they're sort of taking their loss in stride. Captain is now the house dog. Captain is our real buddy. Queenie is still prone to the zoomies. She is now 11 months old, so we know she'll slow down. Collies tend to have a kind of raucous first year and then settle down a bit. She's much smaller, Queenie, than our Eleanor was. Eleanor was a big girl. She was like 80 pounds. Queenie looks like she's going to top out at about 65. She's a very sturdy, square-built little girl. She's got a nice build. She doesn't quite have Eleanor's looks, but she's beautiful. She's a sable collie. I mean, how ugly do you think Lassie's going to be, So they're very funny. Captain the other day is very cute. I left her in the house and I went outside for about 15 minutes. I came back in. And Captain, when she's worried, she smiles like a human. And she will look at you and she'll just bare her very front teeth. And it's very cute. She only does it to me. I don't think she's doing it to the boys. But they have noticed it, that she has this habit. But it's Captain expressing gladness to see you, that she does her version of a human smile. It's very funny. Some dogs do it. My first Sheltie, Devin, used to be able to do it. I'm trying to think who else did. I know we've had other dogs that smile, but Captain very noticeably does it. The Hubs date, well, we had Happy Hubs Day, alias birthday. That went by, and it was very pleasant. We had just a very nice day. I made a cake, and we had other things we had to do that day, including I was working. But, we've been enjoying his birthday in little dribs and drabs and gave him some nice presents. We also apparently had a blue moon. No, I don't think it was a blue moon. You know what a blue moon is, right? It's the second full moon of a month, because you're only supposed to get one full moon in every month, but every now and then the Julian calendar, the solar calendar, doesn't work out with the lunar calendar, and so you get 2 full moons inside a solar calendar month. So I don't think there was a blue moon this month, seriously, but it might as well have been. I guess it was the planets aligning last week, because boy, what a week. Let's see. Without whinging too much, both the toilets backed up, the septic tank got full, and we ran out of propane all on the same night. And of course, that night went down to 31 degrees. Yeah, no real working toilets and no heat in the house. We did have space heaters. We bowled on through, but we ended up getting like $3,000 worth of bills for repairs and various other things all in one night. It was pretty horrifying. As I speak to you, this has all been resolved. The septic tank was pumped out today, so all 1,200 gallons, so now we can go for a few years. So bit by bit, we are rising above, although our propane costs, which is, of course, the cost of heating our house out here on the farm, where we don't have direct gas lines hooked in, our propane costs are insane. And, we are just dealing with it. But it certainly makes it seem likely that we're going to get serious about solar. And in the middle of all this, I was elected Clinician of the Month at work. So that was really nice. A hearty hooray for that. A nice certificate and a $50 gift card. And another line on the resume. So I have to say I'm rather enjoying that. And it was very nice. What I thought was telling, though, was there were 4 comments that were given to me about these are things people said about you. 2 of them emphasized I get my work in on time and I use the technology in an ethical way. And what really shocked me is that all the comments said, oh, I'm really good in our consultation meetings, that I have really good interventions, and I'm really supportive and funny and kind. But I thought it really says something when instead of people saying, wow, she's a really great therapist, what they say is, boy, she really can use the technology. It really shows you the direction that we've all had to go in healthcare to survive, at any rate. On the calendar, the Evolution of Psychotherapy in Anaheim, December 12th through 17th. I have not decided if I will go in real time. I probably will because I have enough points. I'm not likely to go to Sunnybank this year again. Too much cost. We really need to get out of the red. But that's okay because after all, there's Gammon. I'm busy, being calm and patient and enduring during the tough times because we've had a lot tougher than this. This really isn't that bad. So I am practicing my dignity under pressure. But the really nice news is that Minerva gets the last word, and there she is doing her Gammon face, where she is sitting in my lap, and if you look at her expression, she's clearly rising above it all. And if Minerva could give you any advice this week, I'm sure she would tell you, no matter what kind of crazy you face, just keep together with your family and get through it, and everything will be all right because you can rise above it all. On that happy note, please remember that we live in a community. Yes, they actually are talking now about the potential end of the pandemic, which is a lovely thought until next winter. But the reality is we live in community. When we take care of each other, that is actually a hugely successful way to care for ourselves. If everybody's looking out for each other, we're all safe. So please remember, wash your hands, socially distance, get your shots, wear your mask if you're too close. Most of all, take care of each other and stay safe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.